Welcome into the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nick Roloff. A lot of news to discuss on this edition of the Heat Report. Nikola Jovic signed a contract extension with Miami about a week ago. Well, the details of that contract were revealed, and it actually is very interesting and good for Miami, which ultimately could lead to a big move coming in 2027. We'll recap everything on today's show, but producer Coop, he's been a little thorn on my side this week, man. He really has. And he said we couldn't get 150 likes on this video. And I just said that's unacceptable if we can't show him up and prove him wrong. So help me out. He's a Mavs fan. F him. Hit that thumbs up icon. And obviously, the 4-year, $62.4 million man has looked good in his first week of preseason action following the extension. And when the money details came out, we may know it's $15.6 million in AAV. But I think a lot of people get confused when those numbers come out. That is just the annual average value, right? That is not what he's actually being paid on a yearly basis. The contracts are usually structured to where the money fluctuates either downward or upward every single year. Well, Nikola's is actually a little bit different. It starts high, $16.2 million for Nikola in the 26-27 season. So that's how much he will make, not this year, the year after. But then it dips down at $14.9 million in 27-28, rises by $200,000 to $15.1 million in 28-29, and then jumps back up to that starting point of $16.2 million. That's a fascinating contract structure. And listen, I'll be honest, I haven't been in the content creation game for more than 3 years around NBA, which means I really wasn't paying that much attention to contracts when I was in high school and college 4 years ago. But I have personally never seen a contract structured like this. It's a valley. It starts high, you go down, and then it goes back up to that original starting point. I've never seen that. I've only seen standard, like it raises by $2 or $4 or $5 million every single year, or it decelerates like that Kyle Kuzma contract we've looked at in the past, where it started at 22 and it finished at 18. But going from here to here, back up to here throughout 4 years, simply something I haven't really ever seen. But what it does for Miami is provide a little bit of flexibility in those two valley years. It does, and we'll explain why here in a second. But I also want to make note, the contract, $62.5 million, it's fully guaranteed. So it's not like they could waive them and save money. No, Jovic is getting all $62.4 million of that contract. But before we get into what and why Miami may have created that valley, you want to show this as well. With that official cap number coming in each of the 4 years, Jovic's cap hit percentage is extremely low in this 4-year extension window. Obviously, next year, it's at its highest at 9.79%, but it's going to be under 9% of the cap in the final 3 years. And you might ask, well, why, if it's $16.2 million this year, it's 9.79, but that same money down here is 18.46? Well, that just takes into account year after year growth in the NBA to where the salary cap will increase. It can max increase by 10%, if I'm not mistaken, Coop. He's giving me the head shake yes every year. So there is a hypothetical where it goes 10% up to this year, 10% this year, 10% this year, which is why it would be 8.46% in the 2030 season. Point is, it's a very solid contract for a guy that projects to be a pillar in a starting piece in this Heat organization for years to come. And after I've gone through the numbers, the percentages, I want you to take out your red pens, become a teacher, and grade the Nikola Jovic extension. I'm going to give you my grade here in just a second, and then talk about what this means for the future as well, but I want to get your grades down below. I'm going to give it a B+. I feel very good about it, and I think it's an awesome deal for both sides. It balances the risk of giving an extension to a player who at this point has never played more than 46 games in a season, but also factors in potential long-term, because he can be a guy that averages 15, 7, and 7 in the NBA, and I wouldn't say is an all-star, but is as high level as a rotation player as you can get. In that same tier as like a Derek White, to where they're not an all-star player, but they are an unbelievable, impactful guy when it comes to winning in the postseason and in the regular season. But like I'll also give the Heat a good solid grade here because it's a building block and someone you're building around. The kid is 22 years of age, and I hate that I can say kid because I'm 25. I feel like an unk. But not even 10% of the salary cap each of the years he is under contract. But now let's take a look at that flexibility because Keith Smith, who is a tremendous cap expert for SpotTrack, mentioned in his tweet when the details officially came in on Nikola Jovic that the way this contract is structured, it gives the Miami Heat massive flexibility in the 27 and 28 season. I know when we were talking about trading Jimmy Butler last year, we talked about not taking in much salary past this year that's about to occur because the Heat wanted to have max contract flexibility for 2026's offseason. Well, that obviously did not happen. They took in Andrew Wiggins, who has a $30.1 million player option, which he is likely going to exercise. And with everybody else signing extensions around the league, there isn't really a good free agent that the Heat could spend on. Now, the Heat could still have a ton of cap space if Norman Powell's contract isn't re-signed and Andrew Wiggins opts out, which Miami could use in a trade where they could take in more money than they're sending out and take in a big contract. But they have turned their eyes to that 27-28 window, which is why in this extension that they gave Nikola Jovic, they were fine giving him more money for this upcoming season in 2026, 27, and preserving flexibility in that 27 offseason, in that 28 offseason, to where they have a lot of money freed up, at least as projected right now. And this looks to be the long-term plan for Pat Riley. Stay competitive potentially over these next 2 years and then pounce on a trade or a massive free agent in 27 or 28. And when we're going to look at some of those players that could be here in a second. But this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every single day. The right decisions on PrizePicks can get you paid where it's good to be right. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Bam Adebayo's points, rebounds, threes? Well, you can do that all in the same lineup only on PrizePicks. Also offers injury reboots, so if one of your players leaves the game in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks will not count it as a loss. You can play daily, you can play season long, and I got a season long basketball entry in. I'm a B-Mill guy in Charlotte, man. I'm going to take the more than on 22 points per game. I'll go less than Dylan Harper. I just think there's too many mouths to feed in San Antonio. I don't think he gets to 13.3 points per game this season. I think Luka is going to be in the MVP conversation by averaging 30 a night, so I'm going more than on his points per game. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. I mentioned the flexibility that the Heat want to have in the 27 and 28 offseason. I think it's very important to talk about who, at least as of right now, is currently projected to be on this Miami Heat roster. These are the 6 guys that are projected, plus Nikola Jovic after the extension. Slot him in for $14.9 million. So as of right now, Nikola Jovic is the second highest paid player on this Heat 27-28 roster at $14.9 mil. But you see, it's a bunch of other young guys, Kalel Ware, Yakachonis, Drew Smith. But then you have restricted free agents like Palel Larson and Jaime Jaquez Jr. It'll be fascinating to see what the Heat ultimately decide to do with those two, especially with Jaime trending downwards. But you don't see Herro. He's not extended to that year at this point. Norman Powell, not extended. Wiggins, not extended. And it goes even further. If you take it one more year to 2028, 2029, there is only 3 players projected to be under contract and are under contract for that season. Bam at $57.5 million, player option that year, so he could have opted out and maybe not be on the team that season. Or Nikola Jovic Well, he will be on the team, but it'll be him and Jokic at 15.1 and 6.2. Those are your three. Like, that's it. The point I'm trying to make by showing the players under contract and their monetary value this far in advance is that Miami is potentially setting themselves up to have another superstar, massive max contract alongside Bam Adebayo. I think it's why Miami is a little hesitant to give Tyler Herro a contract extension. We'll see if one ultimately gets done before the deadline of October 20th, and then it would be pushed off until the offseason. But I think Miami is trying to kind of say, all right, we're going to wait to see how this year plays out with Herro, not commit to anything so they can have that flexibility open, which is why they structured that Jovic contract the way they did. We're going to look at some free agents here in a second, but make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we're going to be covering the Heat all year long. We'll be doing watch parties, starting off slow, busy football season here at the company, but then once we get into January and February, full steam ahead, every game being live streamed. So hit that sub button and subscribe today. Let's look at that 2027 NBA free agency class, which is obviously the first time the Heat would have flexibility. And yes, I know not many of these players will get to free agency, but it also speaks to who could be available on the trade block because, well, if they're potentially going to be free agents, you have to imagine the teams, if they don't plan on re-signing them or they want to leave in free agency, would likely just get traded the year prior. Giannis has his player option this year. So does Anthony Davis, Nikola Jokic. And the one that I want you to monitor the most is Donovan Mitchell. There is a world where Mitchell and Cleveland come up short in the next couple of years, this season and in 2026, to where before the player option kicks in, Mitchell could either opt out or opt in and request a trade to where he can control where he goes, and maybe that's where Miami likes to pounce. We know Donovan Mitchell and Bam Adebayo are really close friends. Trae Young, Brandon Ingram, Tyler Herro, and Cam Johnson headline the unrestricted free agents. We'll see if any of them get to that point. But if you wait one more year, which obviously Miami probably would not want to do, you get to 2028 NBA free agency, where the class is absolutely stacked because as of right now, those player options that Mitchell, Giannis, AD, and Jokic have now become unrestricted free agents. Do they get there? No, logic says not. But Jalen Brunson now has a player option. Luka Doncic has a player option. Alongside Darius Garland and Morant, Pascal Siakam, their contracts don't have options. They just go from under contract to unrestricted. Same thing with Zion. Could be an interesting name to keep your eye on. But with Luka, that's where you probably want to keep your eye because LeBron is going to retire the next couple of years. Luka signed a 3-year extension to keep his options open to where he gets paid now, but if he doesn't like what happens in LA over the next couple of seasons, he could ask out or test the waters in free agency. And if he likes what's going on, well, then he could just sign a massive extension a couple of years from now and be in LA for the rest of his career. But that's a name that you should keep an eye on. The flexibility, I will say, though, is more likely to be used in a trade rather than a free agency. In today's NBA with the CBA, it is just incredibly unlikely that players reach free agency. Why? Because these teams understand how the game is now being played. And they cannot risk these type of players and their value in league circles to leave them for nothing. The last time a superstar free agent, quote unquote, hit free agency was 2 years ago with Paul George. You know what? Look at how it's gone so far. It's been an absolute disaster. So the flexibility Miami currently possesses for those 2 off seasons would likely be used in potentially trading for a star and being able to take in a big contract rather than being able to sign someone outright in free agency. All right, we'll close the show out here. Rolly's final word. The Nikola Jovic contract extension, which is how we started today's show, it's perfect for him. He's not overpaid. The Heat did not put too much risk. They did not put all of their eggs in one basket like they would if they extended Tyler Herro. It's perfect for both sides. Gives Miami a building block in that starting front court, potentially as the 4-5, Bam and Jovic, or maybe he gets moved to the 3 and Ware starts, where you have Jovic, Bam, and Ware as your front court. It's a good building block for Miami at a fair price point, and I'm very excited and happy about it, especially after the contract details came out, which we broke down earlier on the show. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Make sure you follow me over on Twitter for more content on the Miami Heat. If you watched the entire video, DM me, go Heat, and I'll follow you back.